Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, where your required activity is to listen and learn so that this information will be retained by your brain. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. This lesson focuses on the activity list, activity attributes, and requirements traceability matrix. All three of these originate from the project scope management knowledge area. The activity list and activity attributes play a large role in establishing the project schedule, and the requirements traceability matrix provides a framework for managing the project scope. We will provide you with a definition for each of these documents and list and discuss their contents. We'll explain how they are created and talk about the purpose. And we'll also make a comparison between the documents, their purpose, and their features. We begin with the definition of the activity list from the PMBOK guide, which is a documented tabulation of schedule activities that shows the activity description, activity identifier, and a sufficiently detailed scope of work description so that project team members understand what work is to be performed. And please note, the activity list represents all of the scheduled activities that need to take place for your project to be completed. So in other words, the activity list is an extensive list that includes all schedule activities needed for the project. The work on the activity list includes descriptions of each identified activity and identifies the activities that will require resources, all project activities that will be sequenced, all project activities that will require duration estimates, and all activities that will need to be included into the schedule model. Let's take a look at this in the form of a diagram. It all begins with the schedule activities. That's because the activity list is a comprehensive list. That means everything that is on your schedule is automatically included in the activity list. The activity description then is just that, a specific description of each activity from the schedule activities that will be performed to produce the project's deliverables. Each schedule activity has an associated activity identifier, which is a unique numeric or text identifier assigned to each activity to distinguish the activity from each other. You know, number 1, number 2, number 3, etc., so on. Also included is a scope of work description for each activity that is sufficiently detailed so that there is enough information to transition this over to the project team. And that all then feeds into the work to be performed. So once you hand a schedule activity over to a team member to work on, they get the activity description, identifier, the scope of work, and they know exactly now what is the work that I need to perform on this particular activity. So we've defined the activity list, given you a data flow process to show its components and outputs, but where does the activity list actually come from? Well, as the saying goes, in order to know where you're going, you must know where you've come from. So that's a very valid question to ask. Let's take a look. In order to end up with activities that we can work on, we have to start at the very top with the work breakdown structure, the WBS. Now, the WBS is a hierarchical decomposition of the total scope of work to be carried out by the project team to accomplish the project objectives and create the required deliverables. So here at the very top, we have everything our project needs to do. Well, we can't do everything at once, so we have to start breaking this down into work packages. In essence, we are decomposing the total scope of work into smaller components. And at the bottom, the very bottom level of the WBS, we call these items then work packages. These can be assigned to individual teams or team members to be working on. And then later on, we'll take these work packages and we actually add activities on top of that. This is the work that needs to be performed during the project on the various work packages. Now it all comes together, doesn't it? But the question still remains, why do we need an activity list? What is the purpose of the activity list? Well, it identifies the activities that will need resources. The activity list ensures that all of the deliverables on the WBS, all of the work packages in the WBS are accounted for, and that the necessary work is mapped to each of the deliverables. It makes sure that no work is left out and no extra work is performed. This is sometimes referred to as the 100% rule. Its usefulness is connected to the completeness and accuracy. It is important to identify and document each activity that must be performed in order to complete our project. So much for the activity list. We're moving on to the activity attributes, which the PMBOK guide defines as multiple attributes associated with each schedule activity that can be included within the activity list. Activity attributes include activity codes, predecessor activities, successor activities, logical relationships, leads, lags, resource requirements, imposed dates, constraints, and assumptions. As the planning on your work, on your activities progresses, there will be a need for additional information about each individual activity, and activity attributes are an extension of the activity list, meaning whenever you see an activity, there are activity attributes that are accompanying that activity. Activity attributes describe the characteristics of the activities. They actually expand the description of the activity due to the fact that they pinpoint additional components associated with each activity. In other words, they are used to add additional information into the activities and into the activity list, like identifying the individuals that are responsible for executing the work, where the work is to be performed, as well as other information regarding the activity. But it doesn't stop here. Activity attributes are a part of project time management and are also used as inputs for the schedule development process, as well as the estimate activity durations and estimate activity resources processes. Let's talk a little more about the role that activity attributes play in schedule development. Depending on how detailed the work is, activity attributes can have a direct impact on project scheduling. How's that the case? The activity attributes are responsible for the details that are used to build the schedule model. They provide expanded information on each activity in the activity list, and it is expanded information, additional details, you might say, that are used to build the schedule. Some examples of the type of additional information activity attributes might identify is the person that is responsible for completing a work package, the physical location where the work will actually be performed, or the project calendar that the activity is assigned to. Of course, this list is not all-encompassing, but it does give you an idea of the type of attributes that you can have. But it doesn't stop there, because the components for each activity evolves as time progresses, so you're going to be adding more and more and more over time. And some additional activity attributes that are used quite often are activity codes, predecessor activities, successor activities, logical relationships, leads and lags, resource requirements, imposed dates, constraints, assumptions, you name it. Really anything that you feel that needs to be added into an activity can be added as an activity attribute. But why are activity attributes used at all? What is their purpose? Well, when we consider the predecessor and successor activities, logical relationships, leads and lags, the imposed dates, as well as the resource requirements, these clearly point to one specific area in project management and to why we use and need activity attributes, and that is for schedule development. Leads, lags, relationships, dates, all of that will help us to develop our schedule. In addition to the schedule development area, activity attributes are also used for selecting, ordering, and sorting the planned schedule activities in various ways within the reports. The number of attributes here varies, of course, by application area. We have now arrived at the requirements traceability matrix according to the PMBOK guide. A requirements traceability matrix is a grid that links product requirements from their origin to the deliverables that satisfy them. Let's analyze this a little deeper. So the requirements traceability matrix is a table that links product requirements from their origin and then throughout the project lifecycle, which means it really links product requirements to their final fulfillment, which is the deliverable you're handing over to your customer. By doing this, it helps to guarantee that the documented approved requirements are what we are going to deliver at the end of the project. I guess you could state it this way. It tracks the requirements forward by examining the output, the deliverables, and tracks the requirements backward by looking at the specific business and project objectives. Make sense? There's more. The requirements traceability matrix also provides structure for managing changes to the scope. It helps to discover the impact of any change or deviation from the scope baseline on the project objectives. Implementation of the requirements traceability matrix helps to ensure that each requirement adds business value by connecting it to the business and project objectives. When we talk about tracing requirements, we should also be sure to note what tracing actually includes. So, tracing includes but is not limited to business needs, opportunities, goals, objectives, project scope, WBS deliverables, product design and development, testing strategy, testing scenarios, as well as high-level requirements traced to more detailed requirements. So all of these and more can be traced via our requirements traceability matrix. Here is a sample requirements traceability matrix that you will also find in the PMBOK guide. The application of a requirements traceability matrix ensures that once you attach each requirement and the business or project objectives, that you get value added to the business. Typical attributes that may be used in the requirements traceability matrix are things like a unique identifier, again a number or a letter, a textual description of the requirement, the rationale for including that particular traceability item, the owner, the source, a priority, a version, the current status, which could be active, cancelled, deferred, added, approved, assigned, or completed, and also a status date. The attributes in the requirements traceability matrix are associated with each requirement that is recorded. These attributes are there to help define essential information about the requirement. And of course, the more attributes you add, the more work it's going to be to keep track of these, but you'll also have more control. That's already quite a list, but we're not done yet, because we could also have stability, complexity, and acceptance criteria as part of the attributes in our requirements traceability matrix. And these additional attributes, they are here to secure stakeholder satisfaction. Think about it. If your product is stable, wonderful, your stakeholders are satisfied, or even the one at the end there, acceptance criteria. If you know what your stakeholders' acceptance criteria are, then you can work towards those acceptance criteria and make sure that the product you deliver fulfills these acceptance criteria. You should create the traceability matrix as early as you can in the project, if possible at the beginning of the project, because it forms the basis for the project's scope and it incorporates the specific requirements and deliverables that will be produced. Its purpose really is to provide a means of tracking the defined requirements you defined at the onset, at the start of your project, throughout the project's life cycle. Let's do a comparison here, starting with the purpose for our 3 documents. Of course, the purpose of the activity list is to identify all your activities on the project. However, the activity list does not contain enough information about specific features, so the activity attributes here provide expanded activity information that leads to schedule development. The purpose of the requirements traceability matrix, on the other hand, is to allow you to track requirements throughout the project and give you structure to manage changes to the scope. Then let's take a look at the knowledge area where we would use these documents. Both of our activity documents, the activity list and the activity attributes, they are part of project time management. After all, we want to do something with activities, and an activity has a duration. Therefore, we are in time, and it's no surprise if you know that the requirements traceability matrix allows you to track your scope. Well, we are in project scope management here. Last but not least, let's take a look at one feature for each document. The activity list is included in the schedule model. However, the activity attributes serve as the basis for your schedule development with detailed activity descriptions. And then the requirements traceability matrix finally provides structure for managing changes to the scope. Let's review. The activity list is a comprehensive list of all of your project's activities and results from the define activities process. Included in the activity list is an activity identifier as well as a scope of work description, so that the project team members who are assigned to performing the work get a good understanding of, what actually has to be performed. We're describing it for them. And if you allow, the activity list is an extension of the WBS. The WBS at its lowest level describes the scope in the format of work packages, and then the activity list explains, what do we have to do? What are the tasks, the activities that we need to perform in order to create that scope as it is defined in the work package in the WBS. And then the activity attributes, they expand the activity list by identifying additional activity components that are associated with each activity, and they are responsible for the details that help to build the schedule model. The requirements traceability matrix is a table that connects product requirements from their origin to the deliverables that satisfy them. It helps to ensure that the approved requirements in the requirements documentation are what is delivered at the project's end. The requirements traceability matrix provides structure for managing changes to the project scope. It helps to discover the impact of any change or deviation from the scope baseline on the project's objectives. I have 2 more slides for you before I let you go. First, a sample exam question and then a tip. So here's a sample exam question you might find in books or online. How do the activity list and the activity attributes relate to each other? Is it A, the activity list focuses on schedule activities while the activity attributes apply to WBS activities? Is it B, activity attributes provide additional information for each activity on the list? Is it C, the activity list may be substituted for the activity attributes in most cases? Or D, the activity attributes are created prior to the activity list? Which one is it? The correct answer is, of course, B. A is incorrect since the activity attributes tie back to the activity list. not the WBS. C is incorrect as well, since the activity list and the activity attributes are separate documents that should not be substituted. Rather, the activity attributes accompany the activity list by providing additional activity details. D is incorrect, since the activity attributes are created pretty much at the same time or after the activity list, but definitely not before. It would be somewhat difficult to provide additional information on activities that do not yet exist, don't you think? So that leaves B. Activity attributes provide additional information for each activity on the list as our correct answer. And here's the promised exam tip, or rather tips, things about the activity list to remember for the exam. First of all, the activity list is not a plan at all, and therefore it's not a subsidiary plan of your project management plan. Instead, it is simply a project document. Something else is important to remember about the activity list, and that it's just an addition to the WBS. It is not part of the WBS itself. The WBS talks about scope. The activity list talks about task, activities, work that needs to be performed. These are completely separate. Each activity in the activity list should map back to one and only one work package, even though a work package in the WBS customarily has more than one activity that you need to perform in order to complete that particular part of your scope. By the way, one reason why we project managers don't often distinguish between the activity list and the activity attributes is simple. Most modern project management software allows you to have both in the same interface. So you have the activity list including all of your activity attributes. Technically, and for the purpose of a successful PMP exam preparation, consider these two items as separate documents. And this concludes our look at the activity list, activity attributes, and the requirements traceability matrix. So it's time for Justine to say,
Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
and of course I say, until next time.